Zara had been counting the days until her 18th cycle with the kind of dread usually reserved for terminal diagnoses. On the mining colony of Corvash 9, reaching breeding maturity meant one thing for orphaned females: transfer to the Imperial Reproduction Facility, where the Empire's endless need for workers would be satisfied through your body, whether you consented or not. She stood in the processing line now, fifth from the front, her purple skin marked with the fresh tattoo that designated her as Imperial property. The facility loomed ahead, a massive complex of sterile white buildings that the other girls whispered about in terrified voices after lights out. Once you went in, you didn't come out until your body failed or you'd produced enough children to satisfy your quotas. Zara had seen girls return briefly to the orphanage between pregnancies, hollow-eyed, their bodies bearing the marks of repeated medical procedures and forced births. They didn't speak of their experiences. They didn't need to. The haunted emptiness in their expressions said everything. "Next," called the processing officer, a bored-looking human male who'd been stamping documents and directing girls through the checkpoint for hours. Zara shuffled forward, four ahead of her now. She tried to remember what freedom felt like, what it meant to own her own future. The memories were slippery, dreamlike. The orphanage had spent years preparing them for this, breaking down their resistance, teaching compliance, ensuring they understood that this was their purpose, their contribution to the Empire's greatness. She didn't feel great. She felt like livestock. "Identification chip," the officer demanded from the girl at the front. The girl, Myra, Zara recognized her from the dormitory, extended her wrist. The scanner beeped. Myra's file appeared on the screen, listing her genetic markers, health status, estimated reproductive capacity. "Proceed to intake," the officer said, stamping her documents. Myra walked through the gate like someone moving underwater, each step slower than the last. Then she was gone, swallowed by the facility, three ahead of Zara now. The afternoon sun beat down on the processing yard, making the black identification uniforms they wore unbearably hot. Zara's blonde hair stuck to her forehead with sweat. She tried to focus on breathing, on staying present. Some girls fainted from panic. The guards simply dragged them through anyway. "Next!" Two ahead. Zara's heart hammered against her ribs. She wanted to run, but where? The colony was enclosed, every exit monitored. Runaways were hunted down, punished publicly, then processed anyway with a mark on their record that meant harsher treatment inside. She'd heard stories of a resistance, whispered rumors of people who helped girls escape off-world. But they were just stories, weren't they? Desperate fantasies shared in the dark to make the inevitable slightly more bearable. "Next!" One ahead. The girl in front of Zara was crying silently, tears cutting tracks through the dust on her lavender cheeks. She couldn't have been more than 17 cycles. Maybe a test case, or perhaps she'd lied about her age to get it over with. The scanner beeped. The officer stamped. The girl walked through. Zara was next. She stepped up to the checkpoint, extending her wrist mechanically. This was it. The moment her life stopped being her own. The moment she became a function rather than a person. The officer reached for his scanner. "Stop! Emergency medical override!" Everyone turned. A human woman in a medical uniform was striding across the yard, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, a tablet clutched in her hand. She moved with the kind of authority that made even the guards hesitate. "What's the meaning of this?" the processing officer demanded. "That one," the woman pointed directly at Zara. She's flagged for immediate medical quarantine, potential genetic contamination that could compromise the entire intake batch if she's processed. The officer frowned, checking his screen. I don't see any flags, because it just came through from the central medical database. The woman thrust her tablet at him. See for yourself. Anomalous blood markers detected in routine screening. Until we determine if it's communicable, she needs to be isolated. Zara's mind raced. She'd had no blood screening. None of this made sense, but the woman's eyes met hers for just a fraction of a second, and something in that look said, "Play along." The officer scrolled through the tablet, his frown deepening. This seems irregular. Of course it's irregular. That's why it's flagged as priority. The woman's tone was clipped, professional, impatient. Do you want to be responsible for contaminating an entire reproductive cycle? The cost analysis alone would see you reassigned to waste management. The threat worked. The officer's expression shifted from suspicion to calculation. How long will the quarantine last? 72 hours minimum for testing, possibly longer depending on results. The woman was already reaching for Zara's arm. I'll take her to the medical facility for isolation protocols. I need authorization from. You need to process the rest of this line before sunset quota, or you'll be filing incident reports all night, the woman interrupted. I have medical authority to remove compromised subjects. Check your regulations, Section 7, subsection 4. Or should I call your supervisor and explain why you're delaying public health protocols? The officer wavered. Behind Zara, other girls were waiting, and the afternoon was getting late. Processing delays meant overtime, meant supervisors asking questions. Fine, he finally said. But I'm noting this in the log if there are any irregularities. There won't be. The woman's grip on Zara's arm was firm, guiding her away from the line. Come with me, now. Zara followed, her legs moving on autopilot. They walked across the yard toward a white vehicle marked with medical insignia. The woman opened the back door, gesturing Zara inside. Get in, don't speak, don't ask questions, not yet. Zara climbed into the vehicle. The door sealed behind her, and suddenly she was enclosed in cool, filtered air. The woman climbed into the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled away from the processing center with practiced ease. They drove in silence for 10 minutes, leaving the facility behind, moving through the industrial sectors of the colony. Zara's mind spun with questions, but something in the woman's rigid posture suggested that speaking now would be dangerous. Finally, they turned into an underground parking structure. The woman parked in a secluded corner, killed the engine, and turned to face Zara through the partition. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, she said. I'm part of an underground network that helps girls escape the Imperial Reproduction Program. What just happened was highly illegal, and if we're caught, we'll both face execution. Do you understand? Zara could barely breathe. You're real, the resistance is real. Real enough. Sarah's expression was grim. We can't save everyone. The program processes thousands of girls across hundreds of colonies, but we save who we can when we can, where our resources allow. Why me? You weren't selected, if that's what you're asking. You were next in line when our operative confirmed we had an extraction window. It could have been any of those girls. Sarah's voice softened slightly. But it was you. So now the question is, do you want to be saved? Is that a real question? Yes. Sarah unlocked the partition, allowing Zara to climb into the front. What I'm offering isn't safe. You'll have to leave everything behind, your identity, your history, any family or friends. You'll be smuggled off-world to a colony outside Imperial control. You'll need to build a completely new life. And you'll always be looking over your shoulder, because if they find you, the punishment for escaping is worse than what you were running from. What happens if I say no? I drive you to the medical facility, we wait 72 hours, then you're processed as scheduled with an apology about the database error. Zara thought about Myra's face as she walked through that gate, about the hollow-eyed girls who returned to the orphanage between pregnancies, about spending the next 20 years as an incubator for children who'd be taken from her immediately, raised to serve the empire that had stolen her future. I want out, she said. Whatever it takes, I want out. Sarah nodded, something like relief crossing her features. Then we need to move fast. They'll realize something's wrong within a few hours. By then, we need you off this colony. She handed Zara a small case. Change into these clothes. There's a wig, contact lenses to change your eye color, and dermal patches that'll temporarily alter your skin tone. You need to look as different as possible from your identification photos. Zara opened the case, finding civilian clothes, practical pants, a loose shirt, a jacket. The wig was short and dark, nothing like her long blonde hair. The contacts would turn her violet eyes brown. How many girls have you saved? Zara asked as she started changing in the back seat. I don't keep count. Easier that way. Sarah was monitoring something on her tablet. But enough to know that what we're doing matters. Every girl we pull from that system is a life saved, a future reclaimed. How did you get involved in this? Sarah was quiet for a moment. I was a medical officer at one of these facilities. I saw what happened inside, what they do to these girls, how they're treated, the medical complications that are ignored because productivity matters more than individual well-being. Her voice hardened. I couldn't be part of it anymore, so I found people who felt the same way and we built a network. Zara finished changing, applying the dermal patches as instructed. Her reflection in the vehicle's window showed a stranger, darker skin, brown eyes, short black hair, close enough to pass a casual inspection. What happens now? Now we get you to a safe house. You'll stay there for a few days while we arrange transport off-world. You'll be given a new identity chip, forged documentation, and passage on a cargo freighter to a free colony. From there, you're on your own. Sarah started the vehicle again. We can give you initial support, some credits, contacts for basic employment, information about communities that help refugees, but long-term, you'll need to build your own life. I understand. They drove through the colony's twilight streets, Sarah navigating with practiced familiarity. Zara watched the familiar landmarks pass. The orphanage where she'd spent 15 years, the processing center she'd never have to enter again, the industrial complexes where she'd been told she'd eventually work if her reproductive capacity declined early. All of it was becoming her past. Thank you, Zara said softly. I know you risked everything to pull me out of that line. I don't even know how to. Don't thank me yet. Sarah's tone was pragmatic. Wait until you're safely off-world and building a life you chose. Then if you want to thank me, pay it forward. Help someone else who needs it. That's how resistance works. One person helping the next, one life saved, creating ripples that spread. They arrived at what looked like a residential building in a middle-class sector. Sarah parked in a secure garage, then led Zara through a series of corridors and up a service elevator. 3 floors up, she unlocked an unmarked door. The apartment inside was sparse but clean, a living space clearly designed for temporary occupants. Two other women sat at a small table, both with the distinctive purple skin of Zara's species, both wearing the same haunted but hopeful expression Zara imagined was on her own face. "This is Kira and Lena," Sarah introduced them. "They were extracted 2 days ago. You'll be traveling together on the same freighter." The women nodded at Zara, acknowledgement but not yet friendship. That would come later, perhaps, after they'd all survived the journey and started processing what had happened to them. "There's food in the kitchen, clothes in the bedroom closet, and entertainment feeds if you need distraction," Sarah explained. "Don't go near the windows, don't try to contact anyone from your past life. In 3 days, someone will come to take you to the spaceport. Until then, this is your world." "You're leaving?" Zara asked, sudden panic rising. "I have to. I still work at the facility. It's my cover. If I disappear, they'll know something's wrong." Sarah squeezed Zara's shoulder. "You're safe here. The building is owned by sympathizers. No one will bother you." She moved toward the door, then paused. "Zara, what you were about to go through, it's not your purpose. It was never your purpose. You're a person, not a function. Don't ever forget that." Then she was gone, leaving Zara standing in a strange apartment with two other refugees, her entire life reduced to forged documents and a promise of escape. Kira stood moving to the kitchen. "Tea? It's synthetic, but it's warm and helps with the shaking." Zara realized her hands were trembling. "Yes, thank you." As she sat at the table, accepting a steaming cup from Kira, Zara felt the reality of what had happened start to settle. She'd been saved. Pulled from a line that fed into a nightmare, given a chance that thousands of other girls would never receive. "How do you process it?" she asked quietly. "Knowing you got out but others didn't?" Lena, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. "You don't, not completely, but Sarah's right, you pay it forward. You survive, you build something good, and someday, when you can, you help someone else. That's how we honor the ones still trapped in that system." The three of them sat in silence, sipping synthetic tea. Three strangers bound by shared trauma and shared salvation. Outside, the colony continued its evening routines. Workers returning from factories, families gathering for meals, processing officers closing down for the night and filing reports about girls who'd successfully been admitted to the facility. One of those reports would note a medical anomaly, a girl quarantined for testing. By the time anyone realized the truth, Zara would be light years away, on a freighter bound for freedom, carrying a new name and a second chance she'd never expected to receive. She thought about the girl who'd gone through the gate just ahead of her, about Myra, who was probably being processed for her first assignment right now, about all the girls still in that line, still in dormitories across the empire, counting down to their 18th cycle with mounting dread. Zara couldn't save them all. But Sarah's words echoed in her mind, pay it forward. One person helping the next. One life saved creating ripples. Someday, when she was established in her new life, when she had resources and safety and stability, maybe she could be someone else's stranger. Maybe she could pull someone else from a line, offer someone else a chance. For now, she was simply Zara, no longer imperial property, no longer livestock, no longer a breeding machine in waiting. Just a girl who'd been saved by a stranger, drinking synthetic tea in a safe house, preparing to become whoever she chose to be next. And that, after 15 years of having her future predetermined, felt like the most valuable thing in the universe. 3 days later, Zara boarded a cargo freighter under the name Maya Sorensen, bound for the free colonies of the Outer Rim. She carried forged documents, a small case of credits, and a promise to herself that she'd never forget the woman who'd saved her, or the girls she'd left behind. The Empire would label her a runaway, a criminal, a breach of property rights. But as the freighter broke atmosphere and the stars opened up before her, Zara knew a different truth. She was finally, impossibly, miraculously free.